Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again. And that must mean that I'm Professor Robert E. G. Black. And this is the Groundhog Day Project.
It's like we're stuck. You know, like a needle on a scratch record.
It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
It's a thing where the same day keeps happening?
I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd.
Time. I promise to explain everything later, but I need you to trust me.
Slow down! What are you, in a damn time loop or something?
Ostensibly, this is Groundhog Day Project blog day 302, dated May 31st, 2014. What high school did you go to? I say ostensibly because right at the beginning it references something else, and I'll ramble about that for a moment. Two things. I just watched a short film Pablo, speech team member, posted to me on Facebook a couple days ago, and I've been prompted with another sort of oddball topic from my daughter Sayer. First, the short film, The Other Side of Yesterday, is a fairly simple thing, less than 10 minutes long, only two actors wandering around LACMA and talking. See, the woman, Iris, and I'll try not to be too spoilery, is stuck in yesterday. A trip to the museum she was supposed to take with her family, but they were killed. Keller, who seems like he's her subconscious or possibly some adjustment bureau type agent if we take the film literally, convinces her that living in the past isn't a good idea. Simple enough idea, so-so acting, some great visuals, but those mostly come from the art and architecture of the museum. The dialogue's a bit cheesy, but sometimes that works just fine, like this bit from the end.
We're all time travelers. Even though our paths are unique and the challenges presented, one truth remains constant. What's to come tomorrow, what's left behind in yesterday, is all determined by what we do today.
Cheesy, simplistic, but true. I did just watch this movie again yesterday, knowing I was going to be reading this blog entry, and it's not really a time loop. It's not even really a time travel story. It's sort of a metaphor, but it does relate, and so I will call it the time loop of the week.
Most of life is just junk, right? It's filler. And then there's these moments.
It's a perfect day. You couldn't have planned a day like this.
Well, you can. It just takes an awful lot of work.
When all the randomness turns into something perfect. It's like life's dropping all the bullshit just for a second to show us how amazing it could be all the time if it wanted to.
I don't know. I think maybe we're supposed to become like better people. Though I honestly don't even know how that could be possible.
Whoa, now. Sounds like someone's got a case of the time loop blues.
Ever think about it? We must miss so many of them. All those tiny perfect things are just poof, gone. Lost forever. But not today.
You can make right what once went wrong.
That is a disturbingly inspirational idea, Mark.
I know, but what is this? Some kind of time loop, like a gypsy curse? Is the universe giving us a cosmic test, or am I just going fucking crazy?
Time.
The last revision is what counts, apparently.
What if we found them all? All the perfect things in this one town, in this one day. We could collect them.
It's also not very good. No offense to the actors and whoever wrote or directed it, or anyone else who worked on it. They didn't even list it on IMDb. You can't find it on Just Watch or Letterboxd. It's available for free on YouTube. I think it's on the LACMA channel, which is weird. It's weird that an art museum would produce, or at least subsidize, a short film about how living in the past is bad. It just feels antithetical to looking at art. I mean, yes, living in the past is bad, but literally, okay, here's the thing. The context of the story, fuck spoilers, is that I think her and her family were on the way to the museum. Also, she feels a little old to be going to the museum with her brother and her parents, but I guess that's good for them. It feels like a student film, is what it feels like. She and the guy playing Keller feel like they're college student age. Their line readings are not very good, but it actually comes down, I think, more to the editing and directing choices than the acting choices. Like, they say a line and then there's like the pause waiting for the next line to happen, rather than it feeling like they had rehearsals to make it feel like actual people talking, even though arguably Keller's not an actual person.
This is yesterday.
What do you mean?
One day into the past.
That's impossible.
Everything's impossible until you experience it. Iris, what do you know about time travel?
Her family was killed, and she ends up at a museum that has no people in it because she's stuck on the museum trip that ended in death. It's part of her grieving process. It's actually a weird premise. It's interesting, and you could do something interesting with it, or more interesting with it. It's almost like Stephen King's Langoliers kind of deal. But this doesn't do anything with it. It's only, I think, 8 minutes long. It's 2 actors, a nice location. LACMA's cool. Haven't been there in a while, but it's cool. And, it's okay. There were much better short films that I watched for the blog. I think I've already talked about a few, actually, like Tango, for example. Back to the blog entry. Second, my daughter asked me what the backstories were for our Groundhog Day characters. She specified, in high school. I recently suggested Phil might have been on the debate team at Case Western High in Cleveland. I imagine Phil Connors may have participated in speech and debate when he was in college or back at Case Western High, or maybe he would have thought it too nerdy. And yet, he went into meteorology and or some sort of media work in order to end up at Channel 9 Pittsburgh. His sarcasm probably would have made him the kind of debater I was, sometimes a smartass when something more level-headed was necessary. But I'm not sure he would have been that great a competitor. I have a feeling he wouldn't have put in the work necessary to excel. I wonder if he did a lot of drugs. Nothing too heavy, maybe some pot. It was the 60s after all. And some drug use might explain why he wouldn't remember the Ryerson twins, especially when one of them went out with Phil's sister, Mary Pat. Here I posted a picture of Stevie Ray Vaughan and some other people, one of which is Stephen Tobolowsky. That tall, skinny guy on the right in that photo is Stephen Tobolowsky, Ned Ryerson, in high school. As skinny as he was, I wonder how good he could have been at the whistling belly button trick. Anyway, Phil Connors. If he went to Case Western High, he probably actually got good grades. Near as I can tell, the only thing resembling a high school that Case Western Reserve University had in the 60s was a pre-scholars program. There seems to be a Case Western Reserve High School in the present, but a Google search is weirdly uninformative about it. Anyway, Phil was probably a good student, but also something of a class clown. Like Fritz Coleman, real-life weather reporter, without a degree in meteorology, mind you, from Pittsburgh, but making it big in Los Angeles. He probably tried his hand at being a comedian before landing his gig as a weather reporter. And maybe that started in Cleveland before he headed over to Pittsburgh. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. In high school, I'm sure he was popular enough. He wasn't a jock, but as nerdy as some of his proclivities might have been, he probably made light of them and would amuse anyone and everyone with a joke or a well-placed insult. And he probably charmed at least a few girls in the high school days. I don't imagine he had a steady girlfriend, if he had any real girlfriend, but it was the 60s, so he probably wasn't a sad, virginal, lonely nerd like we might portray such a character if he were in high school today. Rita Hansen. She was studious, I'm sure. She never tried drugs and made sure everyone knew it. And considering her family has a summer home on a lake, presumably in the Carolinas, just like Andie MacDowell's real-life family had one in North Carolina, they were probably well-to-do. Having money and being pretty, she could have been resented but she was quiet in the halls and kind to everyone when given the chance. She studied hard and always turned her homework in on time. Inspired by another Rita Moreno, maybe she liked to go out for school musicals. The lead, of course, though she would probably be perfectly happy with a supporting role. She didn't have time for boys. 60s America, with the women's liberation movement going on, Rita probably liked to think of herself as a liberated young woman. In college, she avoided a lot of the more radical elements, and in the 70s, when her friends were getting more free, she turned a little more conservative. In the 80s, she produced some local theater and eventually got a job at a local station in South Carolina. But that was not fulfilling. When she got a chance at a producer job in a bigger market, like Pittsburgh, she leapt at the chance. Larry. He was like Phil Connors, minus the charm. Just like on their trip to Punxsutawney. If his high school had an AV squad, he was on it. I imagine him a bit like Paul Pfeiffer in the Wonder Years, actually. You can see why his few friends would like him, but he's just a little too weird and nerdy for most to pay him any mind. Unlike Phil, Larry probably got pushed around by the more popular kids, the jocks and whatnot. He probably kept it to himself more than anything, spending a lot of time reading Marvel comics in his bedroom. He especially would have liked Spider-Man because he was a teenager like him, but with superpowers. He wouldn't have cared for the X-Men much, though, because they were too much outsiders like he was. Larry and his small circle of friends probably made little films that no one wanted to watch except maybe their parents. It's set at the end of the 70s, but I figure Larry is like the kid in Super 8 in that regard, but without the excitement of real aliens or a chance with his lead actress. Today's reason to repeat a day forever: to invent background stories for every fictional character. Seriously. Every. And next week I think I'm going to start fighting with the goofs from IMDb. Again. That ought to be fun.
Knew you were gonna say that.
This has been a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find links to more at lemmingdrops.com or join the Facebook group Lemming Drops Studio Tour. Also, you can support all my shows at patreon.com/lemmingdrops.
What is wrong in the end which never comes? Or which comes again and again, lapping, like waves.
Since the Big Bang set everything in motion, everything that happens in this universe has to be the way it is. Particles unfolding the way they're destined to.
How do you sleep at night? You've never seen Groundhog Day?
Yeah, you know Groundhog Day is not a documentary.
Remember when Groundhog Day was just a movie?